Welcome in. It is Big Ten Today. It is presented by CBW on this Thursday. We are delighted to have you with us. All those topics I just mentioned on the show in the next hour. Action pack. We'll also look ahead to what is a really good weekend on tap in the Big Ten, actually starting with some games tonight. So all of that coming up. And here to help me along the way is Trent Meacham. Trent, 3 weeks from now, we will be in the heart of the conference tourney. Hard to believe. And we got going last night with a really good triple header, some very compelling games.
The biggest thing we saw last night is these teams that are at the bottom of the league. You might think, man, here we are late February. They've had some struggles this season. It could be for injuries. It could be for a number of reasons. But some of these teams are playing really good basketball. Penn State had lost so many games. They were fantastic. They looked like a tournament team last night. Washington, Rutgers, the freshmen are going. So, man, these teams, Dave, it doesn't matter who you're playing. A lot of good basketball. We saw that last night, and I think that's just setting up these final few weeks. I don't care who's playing, where it's at. It's going to be some great basketball.
Oh, we have seen that this year in the Big Ten. There's only one team in the Big Ten that doesn't have a quad one win this year. That's actually Iowa, and we know how competitive Iowa can be. We saw it last night. Let's start there with our big story. They were hosting Oregon, and the Ducks went on the road, picked up their third straight win, a game they led for more than 36 minutes, although Iowa rallied to take the lead in the final few minutes before the Ducks pulled it out. Nate Biddle led the way with 21 and 10. Andy Katz was there to get the post-game reaction.
Well, Dana, that was a wild last minute. So many different calls to the monitor. How would you describe how you survived that final minute?
Survived. That's all it was. We made some mistakes. Jackson stepping out of bounds and didn't execute very well a few possessions, but just need a win. You know, in February, you got to figure out a way. We're fortunate. You know, they ate us up defensively. We couldn't get them stopped. Man, they hit some tough shots, but a few of them, we get them in that rhythm, and they're tough. So we figured out a way to survive, and that's all it was.
Defensively in that final minute, you guys had to come up with play after play, including a two-handed block by you. How would you sort of describe what you had to do in that final few possessions and your overall team defensively?
No, yeah, you know, with a close game, my job is to contest every shot around the rim, and you know, it was a smaller guy. You know, I just tried to win up to wall up, and the ball just ended up in my arms on that block. But no, just at the end of the game, you know, we got to lock down defensively and contest every shot that we can. And you know, I was trying to do a good job of that. And at the end, you know, I got a couple blocks there, just doing what I got to do.
They did do what they needed to do, and that has been a theme for Oregon this year, Trent, a team that got off to such a good start. It's been a little bit up and down in conference play. They're even at 500, but when it is a close game, the Ducks find a way. 6-2 now in games decided by 4 points or fewer. What did you make of this escape in Iowa City?
Well, they survived, as Coach Altman said, and I'm not always quite sure how they did it, but they show this is such a deep team, and when you have your leading scorer, very talented player like Jackson Shelstead, not make one basket from the field, really not much of an impact on the offensive end of the floor, and you still get a win on the road. Nate Biddle, though, I thought he was terrific. I thought they went away from him a bit in the second half. He was so dominant in the first, but finishing with 21 and 10. The 4 assists, though, are huge, and the 3 blocks are big, including that game potentially winning block where Josh Dix had the 3-point attempt there in the final second. So he was really big for them. Hit that massive 3. I believe they were down 2 in the closing minutes. So he did so many good things for them. When they play through him, that's really important for them, especially as I look at this Oregon team. I don't think they have a true point guard. So when they can play through Biddle, that's big. Now, TJ Bamba, he stepped up. I think he's leading them in assists this year. He had 6 assists to go along with his 10 points. As a team, they shared the ball well. And that was very important. Spread the wealth. They have a lot of guys that can make an impact and found a way to win, which is kind of what they've done. But really, I give so much credit to Nate Biddle making plays on both ends of the floor, even a couple Iowa drives. He was right there. I think making an impact, even though they weren't blocks, to scare those drivers to missing those layups there in the closing minute.
I'm with you. They figure out a way. It's 7 quad one wins now for Oregon. It is tied for the most in the Big Ten with Wisconsin, Illinois, and UCLA. As for Iowa, it kind of felt like this was their season a little bit in a nutshell, and some in positive ways. I mean, they really, they played hard. I mean, you understand Peyton Sandford. He certainly gets that, hey, the career's winding down here. I thought he gave incredible effort. You can't fault the effort at all, and Fran McCaffrey said as much after the game. It just comes down to not being able to make stops when they need to make stops. Like, it's hard to give up, in this case, 1.25 points per possession and win games, no matter how good you are offensively. And we saw that again from the Hawks. But what did you take from what you saw from Iowa last night?
Well, I would say they really compete, Dave. This is an undersized team. They were undersized when they had Owen Freeman, who's a very good interior player. And now without him, they can really struggle to defend the paint, to rebound. They get out rebounded almost every night. Down 5-19 in second chance points. It's hard to win games when you're doing that, but they gave themselves a chance because they competed. Peyton Sandford, he leaves it all out there. 25 points last night. You can tell he wants it. You can tell it killing him to not finish strong as a team. But, man, he's competing. Josh Dix, once again, had a nice game with 19 points. They have such a hard time on the inside, and then they get into rotations and they're scrambling, giving up open looks. But when you compete like that, I like when they can extend their defense 94 feet, get after teams a little bit. And we saw that Iowa brand of basketball in the second half kind of come to life. The ball's flowing. Dix and Peyton Sandford are playing with a lot of confidence. So if they do that, they're going to have to make shots at a high level to win games here down the stretch. But, Fran McCaffrey, he talked about in the post-game presser and just the character of the guys. And that was evident last night, just unfortunate, not quite enough to come out with a win.
I'm with you. It's clear how much Fran likes this team, and you understand why. And to your point, I mean, there just aren't many teams out there that can lose their leading scorer and rebounder when you already struggle as much as they do on the glass and just kind of pick up where they left off. And that's what's happened, unfortunately, with Iowa and Owen Freeman. So that's the story in that game. What about Rutgers? I mean, this was a high-level offensive game until the overtime. Honestly, the overtime was a little bit ugly. But Washington and Rutgers back and forth. Both teams shot over 50% in regulation. It was a really fun watch, and Rutgers figuring out a way to get a really important win as they battled to try to get into the Big Ten tournament.
Well, here, Dave, two teams at the bottom of the standings playing really, really good basketball there. That second half, the final few minutes were, they were terrific. Both teams going back and forth, making plays, making tough shots, stepping up in different ways. And for Rutgers, you got two elite players. Dylan Harper showed how special he was. 34 points. Did it from the perimeter, 4 threes, got to the basket, showed the mid-range. When he's so tough, though, is when he's getting into the paint with his frame, with his size. 12 for 14 from the free throw line last night. He may have matched Washington's free throw attempts just himself, or he was close to it. That's what makes him so tough. And using his size, using how his change of pace. He's so good with his left hand, but he can finish with the right as well. Just a special player. I thought Ace Bailey, too, wasn't as spectacular, but 18 points, 8 rebounds. He got on the boards, especially that second half and overtime, when things were maybe tougher on the offensive end, some possessions. He bailed them out, getting to the offensive glass, drawing fouls. Jeremiah Williams stepped up again with some critical plays, both on the offensive end and also the defensive end. I thought the play of the game when Washington had the ball in the deep corner, taking it out with a 1-point lead in the final 30 seconds or so, and to get that steal, draw foul, get Osibor out of the game. That was the play of the game in my mind.
It was, yeah. Jeremiah Williams coming up with a big steal there was interesting. In watching the broadcast, Don McClain called it. I mean, he said this is a really tough place to have to inbound the ball from, and a mistake that Washington would dearly love to have back. I will say this, like, if you're looking at what moving forward, I would say for Washington, like, man, Zoom Diallo, like, I understand that Bailey and Harper get all the hype, and justifiably. I mean, they're both going to be top 5 picks in the NBA draft. But, man, Zoom Diallo is a freshman to be reckoned with in the Big Ten. I thought he elevated his game last night. It was really, it's one play away. I mean, it's an inability to get the ball in bounds that separated Washington from winning this game. But you look at the way that Danny Sprinkle's team has played down the stretch. They had won 3 of 5 going into that game. I think there's a lot to build on for Washington, Trent.
Oh, there's no doubt, Dave. I watched you guys and Coach Weber and Jordan Taylor talk last night on the Big Show, and I heard Coach Weber talk about, Washington earlier on this season, they weren't very good.
No.
And right now they're a good Big Ten ball club. They've really improved defensively. They have good length and quickness, and they make things tough on you. They just couldn't slow down some NBA players last night. It really was a deal for them. And then offensively, they're playing much better. I think if they had Great Alcibor in the overtime, they may have won that game. Zoom Diallo has been pretty consistent. He's been in double figures almost every game. He took it up, as you said, Dave, another notch last night, at 6'4", 6'5", and with his strength as a point, man, he's really effective. I thought even in overtime, he got to the basket, didn't finish a couple right there at the rim that he normally does, but he is an impressive young player. And for them to kind of build around, that was a huge get for Danny Sprinkle, but he's got a bright future and playing really good basketball right now, too.
Agree 100%. They head on the road. They got Iowa and Wisconsin coming up next. Kind of a missed opportunity as they look to get into the Big Ten tourney. This is their only home game in a 5-game stretch. Finally, let's talk about Nebraska and Penn State. And, man, first of all, let's give all the credit in the world to Penn State. I don't want to in any way, as I kind of preface this, ignore what Penn State did, because it was fabulous. And they came out from the word go, and they played like a team that started the year 12-2. But, man, Nebraska is playing for a spot in the NCAA tournament, and this is the second straight game, Trent, where they have come out flat as a pancake in the first half. They did it against Northwestern. They got down by 20, and Northwestern is so shorthanded and so beaten up that Nebraska was able to make a run on them and eventually pull out the game. They weren't able to do it against Penn State, and so it's really concerning, I think, for Fred Hoiberg's team. Again, we'll talk about them in a moment. Let's focus on what Penn State did, which was they took the fight to Nebraska from the word go, a team that had lost 7 games in a row. This was the formula earlier in the year when they got off to that great start, and they were able to recapture it last night.
We saw Penn State at their best, and they get after you for 94 feet. They get up under you, 11 steals to 17 fast break points, 52 points in the paint. I mean, so this is a team when they're aggressive defensively and they're aggressive offensively, dribble driving the ball. They're hard to contain. They're hard to keep out of the paint. And it was a number of guys doing that. Then you have Zach Hicks knocking down 5 threes. You have Big Yannick rolling to the rim for lob dunks. So on both ends of the floor, we saw what this Penn State team could be. It's unfortunate, Dave. I thought they lost a couple games in that losing stretch early that they could have won, that they played good basketball, and then it started just going downhill from there. But they looked like a very good team last night, especially with Ace Baldwin leading the way, doing a little bit of everything, 10 points, 8 assists, 6 steals. So he was their leader. He was on Bryce Williams for a good portion of that game. And this is, at full strength and playing their brand of basketball, another good team in Penn State.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I had Penn State against Michigan earlier this year, a game they easily could have won in Ann Arbor. There were a number of games like that. We all know the stat. There were 1-7 in games decided by 6 points or fewer in the Big Ten this year. So you flip a few of those games, and you're talking about a very different story with the Nittany Lions. All right, let's get to my long preamble about this game, which is Nebraska. And look, they were really fortunate to win in Evanston on Sunday. And honestly, in hindsight, had they not won that game in combination with this one, it would be really tenuous at this point in terms of the tournament. Now, the one thing I'll say is Northwestern's a quad 1 game on the road. Penn State's a quad 2 game. I mean, these aren't damaging losses in that sense. But when you look at, trying to be at 500 in the league, trying to get to 20 wins, like all those things that are, while not hard and fast rules to get you into the NCAA tournament, are still kind of benchmarks of what NCAA tournament teams look like. This is tough. Now, the flip side of it is, Trent, they've got the second easiest schedule, according to Bart Torvik, in the Big Ten the rest of the way. They got 3 of their last 4 at home. They got to figure this out, though. They've got to get off to better starts, and you could hear the frustration in Fred Hoiberg's voice in the postgame last night.
Yeah, there's no doubt, Dave, and I'm glad you went back to the prior game against Northwestern, because that's what I was thinking. There's no excuse for starting halves a full first half, playing the way that they did, especially when you think about how they had done in games leading up to that and the experience of their team. I think they're a mature team playing really good basketball. But last night, down 27-50 at halftime. I mean, on both ends of the floor, they were inefficient on offense. I believe they had 11 turnovers that first half. They were outscored 80-30 in the paint. So it just did not bring any bit of fight to the game. Yes, they were able to come back against a depleted Northwestern ball club, but you're not going to be able to do that most nights out. So this is going to be really important for them to get back to it. I believe they got Michigan next.
They do.
At home. That's a massive opportunity for them to get their swagger back, especially starting with that fight. And, 4 big games for them to finish out the season. I love to see them finish strong because I think they have a mature team, and they're led by a guy in Bryce Williams that can finish games, that can be a go-to guy, and a team that could do some damage in March.
Agreed, and I like the way you frame that. I'm focusing on, they've got a lot of winnable games here down the stretch, but as you said, hey, the one that could really resonate with the tournament selection committee is beating Michigan at Nebraska on Monday. That would be a huge win. Again, they're safely in as of now. You're not out of the NCAA tournament when you lose a quad 2 game on the road. Again, these are just games that would put some distance between you and the bubble. Mike DeCourcy had them as a 9 seed in his bracket on Tuesday. It'll be interesting to see where they are tomorrow. But again, kind of to your point, the fight wasn't there from the outset in these last 2 games, and it's going to need to be here down the stretch for the Huskers as they look to make it to their 2nd straight NCAA tournament. More from Trent coming up here in a bit. Still
pinballing right to McKenzie. In transit, McKenzie got it, plus the foul. A 3-point play machine, and what a bounce for Illinois at home. A program record, 8 straight wins. Their heart and soul continues to produce victories.
What a story Illinois has been. We look at our big stat presented by CDW. You heard 8 straight conference wins, longest such streak in the history of the program. Doing this in just the 3rd year under Shauna Green after she came over from Dayton. Made the NCAA tournament in her first season for the first time in 20 years. They won the WBIT last year. Now 21-5 this season despite a host of injuries as they head to UCLA tonight. And the head coach of the Fighting Illini, Shauna Green, joins us now. And Coach, this is one of the best stories in college basketball this year. A team that has just been ravaged by injuries, unfortunately, as we will talk about here, but just keeps on winning. And now in the top 25 again this week. I understand that doesn't have bearing on the NCAA tourney or on winning the Big Ten or any of that stuff. But what does it mean for your program to be back in those rankings?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's huge when you can be ranked, and especially for a program like us as we're taking over, for a couple of years. We've been here now going on 3 years. So for us to get back in that top 25 is a big step for us. And I think this team earned it. They deserve it. We've proven it with 11 wins in this conference, which was the hardest conference in the country. Just won some really tough games, and doing it all while, like you said, kind of undermanned. But that doesn't matter. This team, we may not be the deepest team, but we got a lot of heart, we got a lot of fight, and they're proving that every single night.
So for people who are maybe just catching on to this story, help them understand the injury issues that you have had this year, because it really goes back to the preseason, and honestly, it's just kind of gotten worse and worse as we've gone along.
Yeah. No, unfortunately, you're right. And, it started in the summer, a couple practices before we went on our foreign trip over to Italy. We lost Letty to an ACL, who we had recruited really with the intention of, playing a lot and having KB play at our 4 and having Letty, who's 6'7", at our 5 spot. And then we had Gretchen Dolan had suffered a knee injury in the Oregon State game, continued to try to come back and play on that, but just was not able to. And then Makaira has been dealing with an illness for a couple of years now and played through a lot. And just, she had to make the tough decision as well that at this point, like, her body just cannot sustain it. So we've had Shea Bolin with a back injury. It's just been one thing kind of after another. And then in the last game in Nebraska, We had Jasmine, who has been starting for us pretty much all season, pulled up with the hamstring, and now she's going to be out for a little bit. So, like I tell them all the time, no one cares. No one's going to feel sorry for us. So we just got to have that next woman up, and we got to continue to be resilient, continue to stay together and connected, and just make up for it in other areas. And that's effort and togetherness.
And I do want to talk about kind of how you've adjusted, how you play, but just personally as a coach. Like I think about, you mentioned Makaira Cook, who you recruited back at Dayton and is someone you've just known for a long time and has been such a part of this build. Like how hard is it as a coach to see her and some of these other players not be able to participate in what you're doing?
That's been the hardest thing, to be honest. And that was, like I said, we deal with a lot of stress and pressure as a head coach. That couple months or month and a half when, you're dealing with kind of Makaira making some of these decisions and Gretchen, it's hard. And it was hard, for me, just personally, emotionally, because of the relationships and because how hard it is on them to not be able to be out there and playing. But at the end of the day, it's about what's best for our kids and their health. And I support them 100%. And now our bench and a lot of our kids that are out, if you watch them, I mean, they are bringing the energy. They're a huge piece to this team, and all of them, and Makaira especially, is a huge piece still to this team as a leader. Even though she's not out on that floor, she gets us going and is the first one leading all the cheers. So, I love this team to death. I love those guys to death. And, it's unfortunate. You want them to be out there playing and be a part of it. But the health is the number one concern.
To what extent have you had to change the way that you play?
We haven't really changed a lot of how we play. We're still trying to play fast and our Phoenix transition. Now that may look a little bit different in the fourth quarter. We're pretty, we'll take it when we can get it, some of those moments. But otherwise we'll walk the ball up a little bit more in the fourth. Our guys have been unbelievable in terms of staying out of foul trouble and having and building their stamina and their endurance. I save my timeouts if I need them to give them a break in the fourth quarter. Even at Nebraska, I called a couple timeouts just to really get them refocused, let them get a breather, because we don't have those subs to put in. So I gotta be really smart with utilizing timeouts. I think the biggest change has been just coming in practice. You gotta be really smart with your practice times, because you just don't have enough bodies.
Talking about some of the players that you do have, Kendall Bostic's been such a fun player to watch, and a player who you inherited, who was already in the program, but it's just gotten better and better under your tutelage. What has it meant to you to see her kind of evolve in the way that she has and kind of be one of those players that you brought along and to make her a part of what's become a really good program?
Yeah, KB, we don't have enough time to sit here for me to say all the things that she does for this program as a player, as a person, as a leader. I actually recruited KB when I was at Dayton, and she told me no. So I told her I was going to track her down one way or another and coach her. She's just a special kid. The work ethic, we talk all the time in our program about being everyday women, and boy, is she one of them. The consistency in which she goes about her business, and she's just continued to evolve. And every year we've added stuff to her game. Her range has continued to expand. She can hit the three. She can hit the 15-foot jumpers, as you see right there. And she rebounds at an elite level, and she's just someone that is reliable and you can trust and count on daily, and that is every coach's dream.
Shauna, this has been a really incredible build, and you talk about KB being in the program when he got there. I mean, they had gone 7-77 in the Big Ten over their previous 84 conference games before you took over, which, let's just be honest, it's mind-boggling. That's really not good. And here you are, the first year you make it to the NCAA tournament. You won the WBIT last year. You're trending toward being an NCAA tournament team again this year. I know it's like the simplest question in the world that probably has the most complicated answer. But how did you do this? How do you get a program to turn around that dramatically in that short a period of time?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for all of that. It's our players. It's the players. They get all the credit for this. We had a couple good players that remained in our program, and then we brought in some people, that we believed in, and they've just bought in. They bought in. They believe, and they work. They play the game the right way. They work really, really hard. They're people that are just loyal kids. You see that. We really didn't have any of our core group transfer, and so they believed in what we're doing. They believe in the vision, and when you get a core group to stay together for 3 years, I think you can do some really special things. And, just the consistency and their chemistry, I said, and Genesis Bryant said it the other day in media, and I believe her with everything I got, is our superpower right now is our connectiveness and our togetherness. This team is just so willing to do whatever it takes for the guy next to them. They don't care who gets the credit. And they just really celebrate each other. So it's a special group of young women. It's a special team, and they're putting together a really special season.
I think the big place that connectiveness shows up on a basketball court is often defense, right? Because you have to have 5 players all knowing what one another are doing. And I know you have talked about this in the past, but you were an offensive player in college, right, playing at Canisius, scoring more than 2,000 points, and yet you have become pretty well known for your defense. So what have you done to get players to buy into that mentality that maybe it would have been hard to get you to buy into at one point in your career?
No, that's why I know I can relate to them. I know that defense isn't fun to play. I mean, I tell them that, I didn't want to play until my coach said, if you're not going to defend, you're probably not going to play and you're not going to be on the floor. So that got my attention right away. But, defense wins championships. Defense is what you can hang your hat on. We obviously talk offense a lot, and we practice them. We got some great offensive players, but if you look at us this year, why we're winning basketball games is our defense and our rebounding. Those are things you can control. Those are things that are hard and passion and work, blue collar. Like, that's what I want this program and this culture to be about. Just let's roll up our sleeves. Let's outwork people. And you can do that on the defensive end. And we've consistently done that in our time. And this group is, again, super connective on the defense end right now and bought in. And our coaches have done an unbelievable job of preparing our team with our scouts that have been elite. And then our kids are locking in and executing the game plan.
Well, let's talk about the defensive challenge that awaits in LA, UCLA, and USC coming up this weekend here, or this weekend. Let's just handle UCLA first. I don't want you to think too far ahead to the USC game. Obviously, Lauren Bett's a little banged up, and so maybe that changes the equation a little bit. But this is a fabulous team. We saw the NCAA tourney reveal this past weekend. They're the #1 overall seed. What would it take to be in that game and have a chance to win against UCLA in the closing minutes?
Yeah, I mean, they're just so good. I'm watching film on them right now, and with Betts, they're obviously just they're super, super, super hard to guard, and then without her, they're still really, really good. I was just listening to the last game, and I think they said they have 4 All-Americans on their bench. I mean, that's just it's unbelievable what Corey's doing there, and have a ton of respect for them. So it's going to be tough. We know that, especially on the road, but like anything, we prepare, whether it's UCLA or whoever it is, we prepare with the same elite preparation and confidence and belief that you're going to go in there and compete and try to win that game. So it's going to take us, you got to shoot well, you got to hit some shots, and then we're going to have to be the best version of ourselves defensively. We're undersized, we don't have as many, the depth that they have, but again, we'll have a game plan ready and a scout ready to come out there and prepare to go out and get a big win.
Shauna Green, looking forward to that one and looking forward to see where the rest of the season takes the Illini. Been a fun ride so far. Really appreciate your time, Coach. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
What a stage for college hockey here in downtown Detroit. Loose, that's in! The Spartans get another one! Here comes Shauna. Shauna takes a look, scores! Tiernan Shauna! Shout it out loud! There's Howard! Down low! Isaac Howard gets one on the power play. Spartans take the duel in the D. 6-1.
Well, that was the last time we saw Michigan State in action, but they're back on the ice tomorrow. The top-ranked Spartans battle 18th-ranked Penn State. Then Notre Dame clashes with Wisconsin. A hockey doubleheader begins at 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific, only on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. We've got 2 regular season weekends left. Here's how it looks. The Spartans up 3 points on Minnesota and Ohio State as MSU searches for its 2nd straight Big Ten title. Now the Gophers and the Buckeyes square off this weekend at Mariucci, so a ton on the line in East Lansing and the Twin Cities. Paul Caponegri, as promised, is here. All right, so let's dive into this. Michigan State, as I said, they were off last weekend, so they head into this stretch run. They're trying to win the Big Ten for the 2nd straight year, and now they get Penn State. And if you would have looked at this series like a month ago,
a month.
You would have said, okay, well, they're just going to cruise through this.
Right.
Penn State's lost once in its last 10 games, really playing well, one of the hottest teams, not just in the league, but in the country.
Yeah.
So give us the lay of the land here in this series as the Spartans look to hold on to that top spot.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's funny, when a team gets a week off, it feels like they've been off for a month. Just the way hockey is, you play on the weekends only. So once weekend off, you got 2 whole weeks. So it's interesting. Penn State comes in the hot team. They've just won 4 straight in the Big Ten. Their season's been weird. They weren't good in the conference. They were 0-8 at one point, but they only lost 1 non-conference game. So that kept them kind of in the mix in terms of like the national seedings and everything. And now this pace that they're on now sets them up to where if they can get a split, that's what they need, at least in these last 2. Because the schedule, you'd say, oh, it's daunting because they play Michigan State, and then they have Minnesota, the top 2 teams in the Big Ten.
But that's what you want, right? Because it helps your computer know.
Yes, because hockey is based on, it's like the BCS used to be in football. You want to have those, especially at the end of the year. And to get a win on the road, that would enhance that as well. And they're getting it from their goaltender and then the national scoring leader, Aiden Fink. So you have the goalie. I think that's the most important part for them. They struggled last year in that they had one of the worst goaltending save percentages in the country.
Yeah.
You know it. I mean, aside from quarterback, goalie in hockey is probably the most important position in sports and gets a lot of, the glory and then all the defeat if they're not doing well. And he's given them a lot. The Russian, Arseny Sergeyev, he's just given their team confidence now knowing they can go into any game and win it. I think that is the biggest key, and it's just built a ton of confidence in their room. And we'll see now. It's a huge test for them, but I think they're looking at it as opportunity to build their resume.
From a fan's point of view, that storyline, obviously, of Michigan State trying to win it, of Penn State trying to play its way into the NCAA tournament. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
That's big. But then you've got the star power of Aiden Fink, who you talk about, and Isaac Howard. I mean, where do these guys stand in like the Hobie-Baker race? How are these guys in the conversation?
Well, they're not in they are the conversation. I think there's a few other guys. You have 3 or 4 Big Ten guys that are in that. Jimmy Snuggerud, Sam Renzel.
We'll talk about in a minute. Right?
Yeah, I mean, right now, metric-wise, College Hockey News does a thing, and Aiden Fink is the #1 guy.
Okay.
I'm going to this is my first year I'm going to be voting. We don't do it on metrics. You look at numbers, you look at when they performed their best, on and off the ice, just everything. But those guys, it's pretty fun. We're going to have a head-to-head matchup between guys that are battling for that. But you talk to both those guys, it's not about that. They're all about team first, getting the wins, winning a national championship, and that stuff is secondary to them.
Wow, so all these years you haven't had a vote for the Hobie-Baker?
Who
in the world has a vote if you don't?
You get a 3-year window to do it.
Okay.
A friend of mine said, hey, do you want my vote? I'm like, sure, I'll do it. That's great. I watch a ton of hockey, obviously, so let's do this.
I would say so. Okay, so then we have this series going on in Minneapolis.
Yes.
Ohio State against Minnesota. I would assume if you're Michigan State, you're rooting for them to split. Right?
Right.
To keep the distance between yourself and the Buckeyes and Gophers. Give us a sense for this matchup here and the biggest keys you'll be watching.
Well, I mean, the Buckeyes have been the hotter team. They've won their last 4 Big Ten. Minnesota, I've been saying it all year, Dave, like they have from forwards and defense, I think they have the most talented group.
Okay.
And they had a really smooth sailing first half, and then they finally had a hiccup against actually Ohio State in January, and then since then they've just kind of been okay in terms of their standards. So I think this is a good weekend for them to maybe kind of prove some people wrong. But they're playing a team that's really good. No matter what goalie Ohio State puts in, they've been great. And then they've had a couple guys that have really stepped up. Ohio State was picked to finish last in this conference.
Right.
They're 6th in the country in the pairwise, which we're going to look at soon.
Yeah.
They're 7th in the voting. And there's reasons for that. They brought in some transfers that have done a fantastic job. Riley Thompson leads them, 16 goals. Dave, he got recruited by one school before college, and it was in Alaska. And he had a good freshman year. And then, he's like, well, maybe I'll have some other opportunities. Ohio State came calling. He was like, why would I not take the chance and go to Ohio State? And look what he's done. He's their top line center. He has 16 goals. And then another guy for them, Damian Carfani, who was the first star of the week last week, has really elevated his game. He's a second year of his transfer. He transferred last year from UNH. These are some of the guys that have stepped up their game. And then Coach Rollick just does a phenomenal job. I don't know how he doesn't win Big Ten Coach of the Year this year, but to have them where they are and to set them up right now, if they beat Minnesota, they're in second place. And the big thing in that is between second and third, if you win your first round series, you get the home game in the semifinal the next week. So that makes this even bigger because both these teams are set up for NCAA tournament. This is more about for Big Ten positions.
So we have Big Ten tournament implications. We have NCAA tournament implications. The conference standings determine the Big Ten part.
Correct.
The pairwise determines the NCAA tournament part. So let's look at the pairwise, and here's where it stands right now. Again, and you already said it, Paul, I'll reiterate, this is how the tournament is selected.
Yes.
It's not a
Computerized.
committee that uses this as a guide. Like, this is it.
Yes.
16 teams make it, but you have some automatic qualifiers. They're going to
Yes.
finish outside of the top 16. You've got 5 of the 7 Big Ten teams in that top 16.
Right.
So Penn State needs to move up a little bit. 14 is usually what gets you. Is that my recollection? 13, 14
Used
in
to
that
be.
range?
The way this year, though, is there's going to be 3 conference that are just going to be one bid league.
Okay.
So you're looking at 13.
So those teams will finish outside the top 16.
Right, or right around 16,
Right.
but either way,
They'll
if
get a
they
spot.
don't,
They're
right.
guaranteed a
So you're
spot.
looking at 13.
Okay.
So right now, if you looked at that graphic, Michigan would be in.
Yeah.
But I mean,
It's a little tenuous.
other conference, there's 6 conferences, right? So that's 3. If one of the other 3, the Big Ten. If Wisconsin were to win the Big Ten, they would knock out maybe Michigan. Penn State. That's why Penn State needs to get into 12 or 13. So they need to. They're like I said, 4 games left. Michigan State and Minnesota. If you split those, you're probably moving at least to 14 or 13. But if obviously you want to get to 12, 11, and then obviously then the playoffs come around, you got to win your series there. So right now the Big Ten would have 4, but right now also now you could see them getting 3 all the way to 5. So it's just very close, and like I said, it's all computer. What helps Michigan is they have the toughest non-conference schedule. So they're sitting at home right now this weekend off, and they could move up without doing anything, just based on what happens around them. So it's fun. At least for less argument, only thing they argue about now is, well, is this criteria, is this system right? Do they judge things the right? Is this weighted enough? Yeah. This and that. So you argue with a computer now instead of you're arguing with a committee.
That's not a very satisfying argument.
I know it's kind of. You can't win that one.
I like the notion of sitting at home doing nothing and moving up. That's everyone's dream. Really. I'd like to base my entire life on that premise. Michigan just sitting there like this, sit back and relax, see what happens. All right, Cappy. Enjoy the 4 Nations tonight. By the way.
Oh man, that's gonna be fun.
Yeah, you got your food ordered and all that, or
I don't know. I might cook, but I'm gonna be there 7 o'clock.
All right.
What a great tournament it's been.
Yeah, no, it is really been thrilling. It's really captivated the sports world. Pretty cool.
It's middle February, right?
Yep.
Perfect timing
Absolutely.
for it.
All right, Paul Caponegri. Good stuff. Big Ten Women's Swimming and Diving Championships kicked off from Columbus yesterday. Great start for Michigan. They took first in the 200-yard medley relay. But the highlight of the night was the 800-yard freestyle relay, in which the Wolverines broke the Big Ten meet record. Through 2 events, Michigan sits in first place with Indiana, Ohio State, and USC following. You can catch the swimming and diving on Big Ten Plus. Women's hoops last night, USC is 24-2. That ties a 42-year-old school record for the best start in history. They topped Michigan State 83-75. Juju Watkins 28-8. Kiki Iriafin 24-10. Marked the 5th time this year they both scored 20 against a power conference foe. No other Big Ten duo has done so more than once. Men's hoops tonight. FS1 has the games. Ohio State trying to bounce back from the narrow loss to Michigan. They will host banged-up Northwestern in that early game. That's followed by USC and Maryland. The Terps come in having won 3 straight. Trent Meacham is back with me, and let's focus in on Maryland first. Man, the starting 5 has just been fabulous for the Terps. I know a lot of talk about the front court early on this year, and Derek Queen has been everything we hoped he'd be. Julian Reese, tremendous. But that backcourt's outstanding, Meach.
Yeah, 95 points for the starting lineup against Iowa. And that backcourt, they hit 12 threes. So, Jacoby Gillespie had 26 points in that game, 7 assists, 3 steals. He is really their engine. He's got such great speed, and he can do it from deep, but also when he gets in the lane, then it's just opening things up for the team. But Rice shoots it at a high clip at high 30s. Selton Miguel is almost mid-40s from 3. So those 3 guys are so dangerous from the perimeter, and Gillespie's playing at a really high level. Their coach is talking about him as the best point guard in the league. He definitely looks like that on some nights. So a very talented team, and we haven't even talked about Derek Queen and Julian Reese. You have the experienced veteran who's been there, done that, and then the young guy in Derek Queen, he's been lights out recently, almost 24 points, 13 rebounds the last 3. So such a talented team, and defensively, all those guys are quick and can move their feet, and that's what makes them so dangerous.
They have yet to lose a conference home game. Mike DeCourcy had them as a 5 seed on Tuesday. They take on a USC team that had that great win against Michigan State, but since then has lost 3 of 4. Speaking of Mike DeCourcy and his seedings, the most tenuous seed in the Big Ten in that bracket on Tuesday was Ohio State. They are seeded 10th. They get Northwestern at home tonight. That is the earlier of the 2 games. What are you focused on with the Buckeyes as they try to put some consistency together down the stretch here?
They've split their last 6 games, and a lot of tight games, Dave. So I think that could bode well for them. They won some, they've lost some, they've had different guys step up at different points. The backcourt trio, with Michie Johnson out of the picture, Mobley and Parrish and Thornton, those guys have a lot on their shoulders. All 3 of them are capable, very capable of going 20-plus a night. We've seen Thornton go for 30-plus. So that backcourt, those 3 are a dangerous group. I think they need consistency on the interior, and I would look especially at Devin Royal. He's had some big games recently. He had 26 versus Michigan. He had 29 versus Illinois. The 3 games in between, though, he was in single figures. So he's the one guy in their interior group that can be a real offensive weapon, and he's got the skills. He's got the ability to do so. Against Northwestern, it's going to be critical for him. I think he's got to attack Nick Martinelli because Martinelli's so important for Northwestern. So Royal has got to be aggressive, attacking him on the offensive end. And if he can be consistent, I like this Ohio State team finishing up. And now they get to go to L.A. And with how brutal this weather's been here in the Midwest, Dave, now to go to UCLA, USC next week, or coming up after this Northwestern game, it sounds like a pretty good deal if you're asking me.
It is supposed to warm up, so we do have that to look forward to. But yeah, this is a game you probably can't afford to lose. I mean, they're 7-11, quads 1 and 2. They have some high-level wins, obviously beating Purdue and beating Kentucky and beating Texas. So they got some feathers in their cap. But this is one, again, Northwestern, we said it like every time we mention them, they're really banged up. This is a game you got to win if you're Ohio State. Dramatic conclusion of our show next. Wrapping things up on Big Ten today. Did want to get your thoughts, Trent, on Michigan and Michigan State, the first of 2 matchups over the final 3 weeks. Dusty May against Tom Izzo for the first time. What are you watching tomorrow night?
This is what I'm most excited about to finish this regular season. These teams played twice. Michigan State has looked so tough defensively. They've gotten after teams, forced 10 steals against Purdue in their most recent game. We know Michigan has struggled with turnovers, almost 14 turnovers a game. They're leading the Big Ten in that category. You don't want to do that. I'm looking at the point guard matchup, the 2 Treys. Trey Donaldson, very talented. He for Michigan can make plays. First, Trey Holloman has played really well, made big shots, distributed the ball. That'll be a great matchup in this one.
It should be fabulous. Can't believe we got it twice here in the last few weeks. Trent, good job. We'll see you next time. Big Ten Today.